Well, gang, 2024 is almost at an end. And like clockwork, around this time every year, I take a step back and I look at all the highs and lows the world of wrestling gave us. And I always think to myself, well, there's no way that next year is going to top this year. But if this year is any indication, like last year, I was proven wrong. And as much as the YouTube algorithm and social media and heck, life in general sometimes thrives on negativity, this week I choose to focus on the positives. In fact, there are so many things this year in the world of wrestling that I enjoyed. I had a hard time condensing it into simply a top 8 plus honorable mentions. I know there are plenty of things that I left out in this list. Let me know what your favorites for the year were in the comment section below. But for now, this week, I'm going to rank them. My picks for the top 8 best things about wrestling in 2024. Let's begin. Number 8, the ladies rule in AEW. I know that sounds like a ridiculous statement, considering the women's division still gets so little airtime compared to the men. But once you step back and look at the bigger matches and moments and the more popular wrestlers in AEW this year, you can see there were still some big strides being made year to year. For me, the top of the top for the ladies was the Toni Storm-Mariah May storyline, the culmination of a year of build between one of the best characters on the AEW roster and her starry-eyed protege, the sudden yet inevitable betrayal by May after she won the Owen Hart tournament, and their big crescendo at All In at Wembley Stadium when Mariah beat Toni with her own finisher, taking the Timeless One's place at the top. In my opinion, it was one of the best angles of the year for the company. Too bad the follow-through has not been ideal. Then you have Willow Nightingale, who is one of AEW's big MVPs of the year. This perennial babyface has won the hearts and minds of the fan base with her sunny disposition, her promos, and her versatility. She can have a straight-up wrestling match or a wild falls count anywhere brawl to equal success. This was Willow's biggest year to date, with hopefully many more great ones still ahead. Meanwhile, Athena continues to be the most compelling thing going in ROH. Her reign as Forever Women's Champion has gone on unabated, all while putting on great matches with her opponents and building up Billy Starks. In a world where most of the other ROH titles are used as ineffective props on AEW programming, Athena remains one of the few pure elements of Tony Khan's Ring of Honor, with a body of work practically unmatched among other women for the year. Then there was the signing of Mercedes Moné, who, whether you like her or not, was one of the biggest free agents in women's wrestling and has added some much-needed star power and attention to the division. Fans can only hope that the output will match the investment. And along with all of that, hiding in plain sight is Marina Shafir, 1/5 of Jon Moxley's notorious new Death Riders stable that has literally taken over AEW programming. She's presented just as legitimate and deadly as her male counterparts and is playing the part well. There's a lot more going on with the women's division than some are giving credit for, and while getting adequate TV time is still a massive struggle apparently, there are at least individual examples of ladies stepping up in elite fashion. Number 7, it's a new day. So I won't be on camera for this entry, which you might notice sounds a bit different from everything else in this video, and that's because I had to go back and add this one to the list last minute. Damn my mid-November hubris. Since Big E's unfortunate neck injury in 2022, the New Day has carried on in some form or fashion. But for the last several months, you might say the friendship between Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston had turned, to coin an old phrase, booty. Tension and resentment bubbled up to the surface more and more, to the point where it seemed like the New Day was headed for a full-on breakup. Then on the first Raw of December, during their celebration of an incredible 10 years together, Big E made his first appearance on TV since he got hurt. He begged his friends to put their differences aside and offered to be their manager. But in a shocking twist, Kofi and Xavier both turned their anger toward E. The first time in forever the two seemed to be united about anything. They chastised E for not coming back from his neck injury like others had in the past, that they had put their career advancement on hold for him. They revealed to the crowd that he would never be medically cleared, then they told him to get the hell out. The New Day broke alright, just not in a way anyone could have expected. It was a heartbreaking scene and genuinely one of the best bits of TV WWE has done all year. There's an entire generation of fans who practically grew up with the New Day, who had been through every high and low, now seeing the most dramatic evolution to the group since they first formed. If they're able to get another good run out of this new version of Woods and Kingston, now heels for the first time in about 8 years, then this dramatic moment will have been worth it. It was a sad but compelling way to pay tribute to one of the company's most iconic acts, and to finally turn the page on a chapter that had lingered for a long time. Welp, here's hoping nothing else needs to be changed. Number 6. NXT. When Scott D'Amore was fired as president of TNA back in February, it sent shockwaves throughout the wrestling industry. Here was a guy who was instrumental in pulling Impact Wrestling out of the rubble, brick by brick, captaining the ship on the way to a successful rebrand back to TNA, only to be fired from his position less than a year after taking the job. It felt as if the rug was being pulled out from under the company at the worst possible time, and fans feared for its future again. With D'Amore gone, could TNA maintain the momentum it had worked so hard to rebuild? Well, as it turns out, 2024 was a banner year for the company after all, thanks in part to some unexpected collaborators. When Knockouts champ Jordynne Grace appeared at this year's Royal Rumble, it opened the floodgates and prepared viewers for months of battles between the stars of TNA and the stars of NXT. NXT wrestlers have been on TNA pay-per-views and vice versa, challenging for titles, making rivalries, establishing partnerships, a crisscrossing display of what can happen when you combine wrestling worlds, and when bookers in separate companies actually work together. Compared to when AEW worked with TNA, this one's actually benefiting both sides, as NXT is experiencing plenty of growth as well. And don't get me wrong, I don't think WWE is being totally altruistic with this relationship either. I still feel down the pit of my stomach they're going to eventually try to buy the company outright. But at least for the time being, this relationship is working now because Triple H and Shawn Michaels actually respect and understand the wrestling world around them, unlike their former boss did. And of all the people who have been benefiting from this collaboration, one man stands head and shoulders above the rest.
Say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry.
Across the independents, the original Ring of Honor, and Impact Wrestling, Joe Hendry made a name for himself with his hilarious musical takedowns of his opponents. And he's been doing pretty well for himself the last couple of years in TNA, but it's safe to say that 2024 was the year of the prestigious one. Hendry Mania began earlier in the spring when Joe successfully campaigned for his catchy theme song to land on iTunes download charts all over the world, even hitting #1 in the UK and Malta. You heard me, Malta! And besides Jordynne Grace, no other TNA star has benefited more from the NXT partnership than Hendry. His mere presence on NXT has resulted in some of the most watched segments of 2024, and he's turned into one of the most popular stars of two different companies, one of the biggest memes of the year. Seeing Hendry's meteoric rise has been awesome for those who have followed his work over the years, and it's great to see him being received so well for his brand of entertainment. Imagine that, social media used for good instead of evil. In fact, so popular is he that I believe in Joe Hendry making an appearance at a certain pay-per-view event on February 1st of next year. And trust me, the pop for that will be insane. Oh yeah, and it's also neat to say that I once had a Philly cheesesteak in Philadelphia with the guy. Look and see how he's done since then. Number 4. CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. CM Punk's shocking return to WWE in late 2023 and the promise of so many dream matches that came with it gave wrestling podcasters such a thrill their collective energy could have powered the city of Las Vegas for 2 years. But Punk's second comeback was almost immediately derailed after he tore his tricep in the Royal Rumble match, his first televised match back in the company and his third overall. Just the worst possible timing. It was a bummer to see him on the shelf so soon, memories of his injuries in AEW coming to a lot of fans' minds. But no matter the era, one of WWE's greatest strengths is their ability to turn lemons into lemonade. WWE used the injury to help further a freshly healed Drew McIntyre along in his quest for additional heat. Combine that with one of wrestling's best men on the microphone and a booker who isn't fixated on poop jokes, and you get WWE's best storyline of 2024. Punk and Drew wrestled 3 matches over the course of the year, but the program was way more than those. Each interaction, every promo that blurred the lines between kayfabe and reality, every savage brawl did a great job in escalating the acrimony more and more. You know they were doing something right when they got folks to care about a bracelet. It all led to the blow-off in the Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood, a brutal and appropriately bloody contest that truly captured the spirit of the match type and helped restore some of the Cell's credibility as a feud ender. Punk's first year back in the company might not have been as action-packed as people had hoped for, but the Second City Saint has made the most of his minutes, recovering from a career setback by literally talking people into the buildings. I'll be honest, when CM Punk came back to WWE, I did not have the highest of hopes. I thought it was going to end poorly for him, like it did in AEW, or the last time he was in WWE. I didn't want it to happen, I was just feeling pessimistic. And then when he got hurt at the Rumble, my first thought was, oh no, is this the beginning of the end? But luckily, I was proven dead wrong. I am happy to have been wrong about how that would turn out. I'm glad that Punk got better and they turned it into a hell of an angle with him and Drew McIntyre. That was some amazing television that they created there. So I'm happy with how it turned out, and I'm looking forward to a happy, healthy, and productive year from CM Punk in 2025. Although I know sometimes when I say things like that, they end up aging really terribly, but don't worry about this one. This is a rock solid opinion here. Or is it? No, don't worry. I'm kidding. He'll be fine. Or will he? I'm just fucking with y'all. It's gonna be fine, okay? I'm kidding, honestly. Number 3, Swerve Strickland versus Hangman Page. I judge a match, a promo, a storyline, pretty much anything in wrestling based on how well it can hold my interest and how many times and how many different ways it can make me feel things. Happiness, laughter, pain, dread, anguish, fear, shock, all those things. And above all else, in 2024, one storyline, one career-defining feud made me feel those things the most. This angle actually goes back to the fall of 2023, when Strickland and Hangman had their first war of words and argued over who would become world champion next. And to put it mildly, things escalated a bit from there. After the violence the two had put themselves through at Full Gear, I didn't think they could take things further, but indeed they did. Along the way though, something odd happened. The fans couldn't help but cheer for the heel, the Psycho who is still cool and likable. And the more fan support that Swerve got, the further it drove Hangman Page insane before he was off TV for a few months. While Page was away, Swerve did play, and he beat Samoa Joe to become AEW's first Black World Champion. It was a well-earned validation of his abilities, especially considering his surprising WWE release only a few years prior, and Swerve had a very strong and entertaining run with the title. But his success brought out the full justified heel in Hangman, incredulous that this maniac who invaded his home would be cheered on by the fans. Not only did Hanger play a role in Swerve losing his world title to Bryan Danielson at Wembley Stadium, he ended up losing the moral high ground when he upped the ante to a ridiculous degree, setting fire to Swerve's childhood home that he had just purchased with his earnings as a world champion. The stage was set for an unbelievably brutal cage match at All Out. Both men took things to a new level of in-ring violence for AEW, with staple guns, cinder blocks, chairs, and a frickin' syringe in the face. Hangman ultimately won the bout and the war, but at what cost to his sanity? This feud had all the hallmarks of a classic. It elevated a mid-card wrestler to a main event talent, it gave fans plenty of memorable and shocking moments, and it also gave us one of the most effective face-heel double turns in recent memory. With its mind-bending amounts of violence and vitriol, it stands tall above all other feuds in the company. No matter how many times these two have squared off, they've been able to create magic in the ring together. Sweet, violent magic. The Swerve Hangman feud is one of the most original rivalries AEW has ever done and is my pick for the feud of the year across wrestling. Number 2, AEW Revolution. Across the board in wrestling, this was a great year for the pay-per-view. WWE, AEW, TNA, they all produced fantastic big events in 2024. But in my opinion, there are two shows that stand out from the rest, and this right here is one of them. AEW kicked off their pay-per-view slate in a huge way with Revolution in early March. Coming off a disappointing World's End event in December, AEW came back swinging with a bevy of awesome matches. Eddie Kingston got one of the biggest wins of his career by beating Bryan Danielson to retain the Continental Championship. We saw a triple threat that beefed up Samoa Joe's championship resume while furthering the Swerve Hangman feud, and Will Ospreay and Konosuke Takeshita gave fans an all-timer as well. But by far, the emotional high point of the night was the main event, a tornado tag match for the AEW Tag Team titles, Sting in his final match alongside Darby Allin against the Young Bucks. From the emotional video package to Sting's entrance coming out to Metallica with his two sons, to Darby's insane glass spot, Ric Flair surprisingly not betraying Sting, Sting stinging up against the Bucks and beating them to retain the titles and go out undefeated in AEW. It was the perfect way to end the Stinger's career, and amazing high to close out what was already a very strong show. That night, we were all little stingers again and got to see the Icon show off in one final blaze of glory. After everything that's been said and done, I still believe AEW's first pay-per-view of the year was also their best. And before I give you my pick for best of the best, here are a few honorable mentions for the year. WWE's production improves drastically. By a country mile, one of the best things about the Paul Levesque, Lee Fitting era of WWE is the huge difference in how the TV product has been presented. From the graphics overhaul to showing the wrestlers enter the building like we see in football and basketball, to the long sweeping shots that travel from the locker room or the concourse all the way to ringside, those beautiful continuous takes that show interconnecting worlds. It's all been a breath of fresh air for longtime viewers who had grown tired of the nauseating rapid cut style of directing that has been toned down significantly. And let's not forget Joe Tessatori's quick and smooth transition into lead play-by-play man for Raw on Mondays. Fans have been saying for years that things there wouldn't get better until Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn were both gone. And wouldn't you know it, they were right! Bryan Danielson wins the AEW World Championship. I'm a simple guy. Whenever I see Bryan Danielson win a world title, I'm happy. With the American Dragon's career winding down, fans have been craving to see him get one final shot at the biggest prize in AEW. As the story goes, Tony Khan had wanted Danielson to win the belt far earlier, but Danielson would always turn it down. But at Wembley this year, fans got the happy moment they'd been searching for. After a great match with Swerve Strickland, Bryan came out on top, making him only the second man in history to have held the WWE, ROH, and AEW world titles. Well, third including Chris Jericho. If you want to, I guess. Seeing Danielson get what could be his last victory of that caliber in front of a massive crowd celebrating with his family was an awesome moment for the year. Just don't think too much about the plastic bag thing later. The Wyatt Six debut. I'll admit that I had my doubts about the Wyatt Six when rumors of the group began swirling. I knew the intentions were good, but I thought it would be weird to see anyone try to carry on the late Wyndham Rotunda's brand of storytelling and world building, even if it was his own brother in Bo Dallas. But the official debut and subsequent promos presenting the new and improved versions of Dallas, Dexter Lumis, Eric Rowan, Nikki Cross, and Joe Gacy was one of the most visually captivating moments in wrestling for the year. Like most chapters of Wyatt family lore, they often start out strong, but it remains to be seen how it's going to play out in the long run. Chelsea Green! Chelsea Green had the worst luck in her first WWE run, getting injured on her NXT debut in 2019, then again on her SmackDown debut 1 year later before she was released. Fast forward to 2024, and Green has become one of the most entertaining individual stars of the entire women's division, while simultaneously part of one of these stronger women's tag team acts. From stealing the scene in promos and backstage segments to taking some of the craziest bumps in WWE this year, Green has bounced back from past misfortune in a huge way. Wrestling crowds outside the United States.
Rhodes to retain! Kick out by Styles!
Tony Khan's music budget. My year in wrestling. Holy heck, can I stop for a moment to talk about some of the cool stuff I did this year? 2024 was one for the books, as they say. I traveled to Lancaster County in Pennsylvania. I reconnected with an old friend and made some new ones. I went to Chicago for the very first time, had some hot dogs, saw the Bean, got to work with Dave Prazak, and shared the ring with a former MLW champion and a former WWE champion. I was on the call for some of the year's biggest independent events, like when Prestige Wrestling brought 1,100 people to the Viking Pavilion. I got kicked in the face by Evil Uno, and amidst all that, I've had the best seat in the house as the voice of POW Pro Wrestling. But most important of all, I've been fortunate enough to celebrate my 11th year of Wrestling with Regret, my 8th year of doing it full time. I still can't believe that I get to watch wrestling and research wrestling and talk about wrestling alongside my amazing crew and it being my living. And I'm so thankful for the fan base over the years. Whether you've been a regretter since day one, 11 years ago, or you just started watching my stuff, I cannot thank you enough for your viewership and your support, because it is what has motivated me for these last 11 years to be doing this, going strong since 2013. Thank you so much to the fans and the viewers. Thank you to POW Pro Wrestling, to DOA Pro Wrestling, Prestige Wrestling, Black Label Pro, Three Legacies Wrestling. Thank you guys so much for having me be part of your shows this year. I cannot wait to see what 2025 holds for this channel and for my time in the wrestling industry. But enough about me, let's get to it. My pick for the best thing about wrestling in 2024 is WrestleMania 40. 2024 was WWE's strongest year in a very long time. And I'm not talking about social media impressions or their large gates or their big lucrative business deals. I'm talking about the one category that matters the most to the fans, the creative. And in my opinion, it was at the strongest this year at the Showcase of the Immortals. It wasn't just Cody Rhodes finally knocking Roman Reigns off his perch to become the new WWE champion after more than a year of build that made this year's WrestleMania one of the most feel-good in recent memory. It was Seth Rollins pulling off great performances 2 nights in a row while injured. It was The Rock's in-ring return as the final boss. It was Sami Zayn snapping Gunther's Intercontinental title reign. It was Damian Priest getting his moment in the sun. It was Bayley and Io Sky. It was Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch. Just about everything across those 2 shows was awesome. Everything except, well, I'll tell you more about that in my worst of countdown. Much like how I felt after watching 20 and 30, WrestleMania 40 gave me a strong, though occasionally misplaced sense of hope and optimism as a wrestling fan. The 2-night event hit damn near every target it needed to hit. Moments were made, stories were finished. We had action, we had laughs, we had shockers, we had overbooked bloodline wackiness that for this one time ended the right way. With the company under the dark shadow of a sex trafficking lawsuit that they are defendants in, WWE made the fans forget about all of that, if only for a little while. Give Paul Levesque his due, because Lord knows he doesn't do enough of that himself, but he knocked the first Mania under his full leadership out of the park. 2 evenings well spent and history made. That's why WrestleMania 40 is my pick for the best thing about 2024. Damn it, I love professional wrestling. But I know there's a lot that I missed. What else do you think belongs on the best of list for the year? Let me know in the comments. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to give you all a real Christmas treat, my worst of 2024 countdown. But until then, be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit that bell icon for all the notifications. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.